Well, Apple hitting another record high today, but headwinds loom over that company with potential tariffs and questions about this iPhone upgrade cycle. So how is the company still powering through all this? For more, we're going to bring in Doug Clinton, founder and CEO at Intelligent Alpha. Doug, it is always good to see you. So let's start with the move we've seen in Apple, in that stock, Doug. You know, ended today a bit lower, but it has been hitting these record highs. It's up about 35% now this year, Doug. In your opinion, what explains that run?
It's great to see you too, Josh. I think the run is really about two things. First of all, I think the Mag 7 in general, we've had a pretty good period, really since the election. We got past sort of the uncertainty about direction, right, at the top level for the country. And I think that you've seen sort of a return to some of these Mag 7 names. We've had some pretty solid performance. NVIDIA's maybe been a little bit more choppy, but look at Google yesterday with their announcement on quantum chips. I think investors are sort of embracing mega caps as a category. The second piece is specific to Apple. If you look at their business, I think that the iPhone numbers, and investors seem to realize this, the iPhone numbers for next year are kind of de-risked. I mean, expectations are low. The street's at about 3% iPhone growth for next year. That feels very reasonable. And there's really no expectation for AI adding much of anything to Apple over the next year. And so you put those two things together, I think that explains a lot of why the stock has been working well.
Let's get your take too, Doug, on some Apple headlines today. I'm just interested to get your thoughts. One was we did see this report, Doug, that Apple now working on developing a server chip for AI. What did you make of that headline?
Not shocking at all. And I'll tell you this, I mean, we've been saying this, I think, for a year now. For any company that is playing in the AI space that has over $1 billion market cap, we think they have to develop their own silicon. It's just a matter of time for any of those companies who aren't doing it. Apple was obviously always involved in making their own silicon for their devices. Now they're bringing that into the server and doing it for their particular use case in AI. I think it's a smart move by them, somewhat predictable, but it also shows, I think, that they are serious about AI. And as they continue to roll out these AI features into new devices, they're going to have to use unique hardware, both on the device and in the server, in the infrastructure piece, to deliver those experiences that are so magical that their customers expect.
And Doug, broadly, what are the advantages for a tech powerhouse like an Apple to bring that chip design in-house?
It's really about efficiency, and ultimately that means lower cost of operation. And so what you can do when you develop your own silicon, you can take Google as an example with TPUs. They've really been doing this longer than anybody in the AI space. But what they can do, because they have a deep understanding of the hardware, and the hardware is sort of purpose-built to interact well and handle well the algorithms that they're developing, you can get some efficiencies out of that interplay between the hardware and the software that ultimately mean you can develop and deliver better experiences and have lower costs to deliver those experiences.
We also heard, Doug, today, Apple's going to start integrating ChatGPT into its devices. In your opinion, I mean, obviously investors are listening to this very closely right now. I mean, they want to know what that's going to mean for, you know, the upgrade cycle. How do you think about that, Doug? Both near term and perhaps longer term.
Yeah, Josh, we've been playing with it in the office here kind of all day just to test it. And the near term and the long term, I'll break them out as you suggest. Near term, I don't think it changes much to the story at all. You know, I think the expectations were low, probably from investors, but also from potential iPhone buyers. I don't think they're looking for AI or ChatGPT necessarily as the real catalyst to upgrade their phones right now. And incorporating ChatGPT, as Apple has done here, it's really a nice feature that they've added, but it's not breakthrough. Longer term, I think that's when you get into a world where it could be breakthrough. You kind of get a glimpse into what the future might look like, where you can actually talk and have a conversation with Siri, with ChatGPT as kind of the backbone behind that conversation. I think that's the world where we're going to, but right now it's really just a feature that lets you interact with ChatGPT through a voice interface.
More broadly, Doug, another question for you. When we talk about LLMs, large language models, and I'm interested to get your take on just the competitive dynamics, the competitive marketplace we find ourselves in right now, Doug. I mean, you all are there at Deepwater, you're invested in Elon Musk's XAI. How are you thinking about the competition in the market? Is it all OpenAI right now? Is it all Sam Altman and everybody else is kind of battling for the silver medal?
Sam Altman is a formidable competitor. He's very hard to compete against, but I actually think the landscape has sort of changed over the last 6 months. And you see a little bit of it today with Google and Gemini 2.0. I think that was a really strong release from some of the information that they put out so far. I've seen some clips where people are actually using Gemini 2 to play video games and sort of get advice real time. I mean, it's really cool what Google has built into their new leading LLM. And so I think if you look at the landscape today, it's very competitive. OpenAI, to me, is still in the lead, but you've got Google very close behind. I think Anthropic with Claude has done a great job. And of course, as you mentioned, XAI, obviously we are biased. We're investors at Deepwater. But I think that they've come a very long way in a very short period of time to build Grok into, I think, one of the top 4 or so models in the world.
And finally, Doug, we talked a lot about Apple. I do want to get your take on Google too, which certainly, made some news this week, claimed this quantum computing breakthrough, Doug, and the stock, we saw a pop there. I'm curious your take on that. What does it mean for investors looking ahead?
I think investors are always curious, and particularly in this market, for things that appear to have great option value for these big companies. And so when Google puts out what they put out the other day relative to quantum, I think investors say, hey, if something really hits here, you look out over a 5 or 10 year picture, quantum could be this meaningful potential upside case for Google. But if you kind of bring it back to the nearer term, bring it back to reality, I think what they did with Willow was incredible. It's a great achievement in the lab. But as we know, bringing something from the lab that's really impressive into production in the real world is really challenging. And my guess is we really won't see much from quantum, from Google, probably over the next decade if you really need to put kind of a time scale on it. So it's really amazing that they're doing this. As an investor at Deepwater, we hope they keep experimenting with this, but it's not something that I would expect to have a big impact on numbers in the near term.
Doug, always good to see you and have you on the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks, Josh.